The tears aren't coming. The tears just aren't coming.
Okay. Just to be clear, it looks like he's dead or he is dead?
It just looks like he's dead. He's got, like, blue paint on him or something. But he's going to be fine.
What is wrong with you?
Doctor!
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and I don't know if all of you are feeling it, but I'm feeling a little bit down about the comic industry. In fact, I have been heavily thinking about maybe just covering 50% comic books, 50% manga, kind of moving forward. I'm not really sure, covering all this negativity is really what I want to do with my life. And I do have a good friend that loves manga. It's been talking about it on social media and want to talk a little bit about manga here on my channel. How you doing, Perch?
I'm doing great. Thanks. Thanks for chatting with me. And yeah, that's a good intro. We were just, for your viewers, we were just chatting, and I kind of surprised you, like, let's chat about this topic. So this will be fun.
Absolutely.
So manga. You mentioned. So I'm curious now. You say I'll interview you like for a second here. So you've been doing this comic channel for a while. You've had great success. I think your subs have grown really, really well. You've got a lot of regular viewers. Your live stream's always getting 200 plus people. It's been really good. But you mentioned something that I'm feeling too, and I'm wondering if some of the people listening to us have feeling the same. And it's the kind of it's negativity, but it's kind of just a depression a little bit on comics, where it feels like you're always talking about bad news. And so, me too. I mean, when I say you, I mean you, me. It feels like we're having to cover a lot of bad news all the time, and it gets you down. Is that what you're feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's just like the quality of the comics. Like, this is an enormous comic book week. Like, there's a bunch of heavy hitters. DC debuted like 3 or 4 enormous, what are supposed to be enormous titles. I'm going through them, and there's some okay comics here and there. That there's nothing really that's getting me excited. And the news is just, it's hard to find the silver lining.
It feels, and I know you from talking, for years now. We know each other for quite a while, and we both read tons of comics in the past. This isn't some kind of we've been enjoying comics for 2 or 3 years, and then suddenly it's just we've gotten tired of them. I mean, you're talking about a lifelong kind of enjoyment of comics and characters and stories, your retrospectives where you go back in time and talk about some of this stuff. I mean, it's this has been a closely guarded hobby for both of us, and for a lot of the viewers I know listening right now. And it's like you said, you get a new comic week, and you find yourself some weeks having to kind of struggle to get through the comics. It's not, to me, I don't know, maybe you feel differently, but to me, it's not really like the comics are terrible. It's just that there's nothing that's just can't put down. There's not that must-read comic right now. It feels very flat.
Yeah, there's just nothing that really just pops off the page. There's some really good artists out there, but
true,
it just feels like everything's in disarray. All the big-name creators that were doing great work at DC have kind of exited for quite a while now. We're kind of stuck with the new status quo there. Not a lot exciting me, personally. And then you look over at Marvel. Yeah, I like Chip Zdarsky well enough and Donny Cates, but even what they're doing right now, I feel like Donnie's kind of like even kind of phoning it in a little bit.
It's a strange, because a lot of people, when they talk about comics on other YouTube channels and things, it feels like they're talking about this disaster, really trash fire of a comic. But again, that like what you're describing is what I'm feeling. It's not that. There certainly are always terrible comics, but to me, I feel like the really bad comics and the really great comics are kind of infrequent in the same quantity. It's this massive thing in the middle where it's not terrible. It's just kind of there. And then when you're relaunching the books and they're, and all this kind of stuff, they're all short-term limited series, you kind of start to wonder, what's the point of this? It's not awful. It's not great. It's just kind of there. And why, at $3.99, $4.99, it's hard to get excited.
Yeah, the word I would use to describe a lot of modern comics coming out of the big two right now is inoffensive. And I think that's the worst thing that you could describe something that's supposed to be entertaining, is they took no chances.
Yeah.
Or they didn't try to do something exciting.
Well, and it's again, it's not everything. You can always find a couple, I think, somewhere in there, but it feels like less. And so you mentioned, should you start doing 50% manga? And manga is being discussed all over the place right now, and people are excited about it. But what do you think? A lot of the people who talk, let's talk manga, or they bring up manga. it feels like a lot of those people are doing it mainly to kind of spite US comics. Not necessarily that they like manga, but more like they're wanting to kind of rub kind of the Western comics face in it a little bit. Like, look, you're getting beat by this other thing. Is that, do you get that feeling?
I certainly get that feeling from some of my viewers, but there are definitely some that have been reading manga for years, and
Sure.
it feels like there are a couple of people that have been, truly converted and like, yeah, this is where I want to be. The problem, Perch, is, I don't have a lot of history with manga. Where would I start? And do people want to watch videos of me reading old stuff, trying to catch up? As I equate myself with the market where I could actually cover it like I do comic books, it would be an enormous transition.
I'm curious. I don't know if a channel covering kind of new, like what you and I do for a lot of new comics, I don't know if that works for manga, because the rate at which it comes over, I mean, it's a different game. It's a very different kind of thing. You can talk about the latest issue that's gone up on Shonen Jump or whatever, but it's not going to be the same. And there are a lot of videos covering. I mean, if you go search One Piece or My Hero, you've got millions of videos up there with people doing analysis of that stuff. And I agree, by the way, with your point. I think there are some people out there, absolutely, who are loving manga, who have been converted. And I think that's great. I'm like Comicron in the sense of, if you're still reading comics in any form, US or manga, good. I mean, that's awesome. But I lived through the manga bust. There's been a couple of them over the last 25 years. It's risen, it's gone up. Now it's risen stronger this time than it has in previous years. But I still am having a hard time believing this lasts. And so where I'm at a lot of the time is, in 2 to 3 years, are we going to see another kind of manga free fall? And then what are we left with? Are we left with kind of apathetic US comics and a lack of interest in manga? That sounds like the apocalypse for us.
There wouldn't be a whole lot of entertainment to be had on here. I think that's one of the things that people do come for the channel, is not only the news. I think they like the way that I present it. I've got a couple of dry jokes normally in the presentation and whatnot. So I don't know if it, all that's going to translate to manga fans and stuff like that. So I do appreciate the people that are here. And I know that I have a lot of viewers. You probably have this too, that they don't even read comic books anymore, but they want to keep up with the industry or the hobby because they're interested in it. And they've decided that Thinking Critical is the home for them, where they can go and they can get their, the coverage itself, be entertained while they're getting the information that they want. And then they can go back to being happy that they aren't doing comics right now.
No, there's absolutely a segment of the group that's like that. I mean, you saw the same thing in wrestling when people kind of got tired of what Vince was doing. And so they'd go to like the Wrestling Lariat or Pro Wrestling Torch or places like that. And they'd read the shows, and so they could keep up. They weren't actually watching wrestling anymore. And I think I actually think there's a lot of people in comics that way right now. And they're kind of just waiting to get some spark to get them back excited again. And that was kind of my big question for you is, what do you think that spark's going to be?
Well, I mean, we had it recently, House of X Powers of 10.
Yeah.
I mean, that was enormous for the growth of my channel, and that stuff was all positive. People do like positive coverage of comic books.
They do.
And I think they were excited about that. It brought a lot of people in. And from what I was told from comic retailers, it brought a lot of lapsed fans back in. Yep. It's a brand that they recognize that was doing something exciting and different that they felt like they could believe in, that was going to move forward, because Jonathan Hickman himself had said, I'm going to be here for 3 years to execute. This is just the first part of what I'm doing, and this is going to be a big plan. You can kind of believe in this. Now, obviously, they're a little bit jaded now because that didn't quite end up being to fruition. So perhaps we have this new team on Spider-Man. The Beyond board isn't going to last forever. I don't think that Zeb Wells, who would be my choice of the writer that's on there to take over full time, I don't think he's going to be high profile enough to get the gig. Maybe they bring somebody of a Jonathan Hickman-esque, status within indie comics or the comic scene to come in and take over Spider-Man, go out there and, make another 3-year pledge to say that they're going to do something amazing, and then launch it with something that's truly mind blowing, like House of X Powers of 10. I think that would be great for the comic industry.
I wonder, so do you think, I agree with you, by the way, but do you think that that's maybe the magic secret here, is get somebody in who's going to commit to a long-term plan, who's going to come in and say, I'm on this ride with you. You sign on with me. It's going to be 3-5 years. and we're going to take you and do huge things with this character, and you can trust it. I think that is what has worked in the past. I do agree with you. I think that's what happened with Hickman. But I'm wondering now how many fans are going to go along with that and trust it at this point.
Yeah, that's the problem, because I think a lot of people that are waiting, they're waiting for change. The reboots don't represent change anymore. The events don't represent change anymore. The changing in writers or whatever, none of that represents change to them, because they've seen it happen so many times. They've gotten their hopes up only to be let down. That it really does take a big name creator with a big vision that feels like maybe they're above Marvel Comics editorial interference, really going in and destroying their run. But you mentioned we do have this Hickman thing that literally just happened. You know, and we know what they did just before that, where they relaunched Uncanny X-Men in a very, shady fashion, saying we're relaunching the title, even though they were going to be rebooting it within the year. And it's really hard to trust any of these companies anymore. And then the mass exodus from DC and Marvel of these big name creators doing their own thing on Substack. Like, who's really available to come in and be the architect of the new Spider-Man universe within Marvel that you can really put your faith behind, that they're going to be in there? It's going to be their way of the highway, and they're going to get to actually do their story.
No, I think comics are in a strange place right now, where a lot of the big names that in the past I think would have come in and do that. I mean, we're down to not very many of them. I mean, Hickman now is in theory freed up. He could go somewhere. Bendis is still around. He could go somewhere, but both men, I think, have had their reputations damaged. And then Snyder is clearly doing his own thing right now. He's locked up. Same thing with Tynion. Same thing with Spencer. Same thing, Zdarsky. I like Zdarsky. You mentioned you like Zdarsky, but he hasn't, for whatever reason, Zdarsky hasn't moved into that top level of being able to just move a bunch of things with his name alone. King has fallen in terms of that. Dan Slott has fallen in terms of his name. So you're as you just go down the list, you're running out of huge names that could have that kind of impact. You can always
Jeff
go
Johns
back
is out there, but he's building Mad Ghost at Image.
Yeah, that's right. Jeff Johns is another name, but he's like Snyder and some of these others. He's clearly got his own thing that's going to play out over the next 4 to 5 years. Same thing with Mark Millar.
And they're competing with Mark Millar. How are you going to keep these people on long term? Mark Millar's putting up terms that are equal to Substack right now, and he's got his own universe.
That's right. So and the next level of people, and that's where I think you get to that. And I'm not talking, by the way, quality. Some people might be listening to this going, well, I like Zdarsky much more than Bendis. Yeah, me too. Yeah. But in terms of like a huge name that's going to move things, you got, your Kelly Thompson, you got your Zdarsky, you've got all these other, people out there. It's a tough place. I don't think that comics can generate that excitement again with a big name. I don't think one exists. And you said something really smart there, which was, I don't think that, they've relaunched so many times that a big relaunch is not going to matter. Nobody's going to blink at that. A big death or resurrection isn't going to matter. And also what we're seeing now, kind of the new stunt is, you get a character to come out, but that's been driven into the ground lately. So, no big name, no
DC,
stunt.
what character are you going to go bigger than the Superman? It's got to be a Batman next, right? Before you'd actually get a headline.
Sure, but you kind of already did it a little bit. You can almost do misfire, with Jace Fox and kind of with the race swap there, and the new Batman is in theory a change of the guard, but just none of these tricks that I think we've seen used over and over the last 20 years are going to work. They're out, so they have to come up with something new.
Yeah, I talked about that in a recent video, to where as the readership is shrinking, and we know that it is because we've heard from the leadership that that's one of the reasons that they're raising prices. So they're having to do this stunt marketing, like this, go out there and make a change so significant that it can actually penetrate the headlines into mainstream media, garner attention, generate immediate sales for the speculators and people that maybe want to come in here and say, hey, look, I supported this change. But then, like, who sticks around? Because you're driving people away doing that with these wholesale changes. They're not really delivering with the quality. You're delivering with the stunts. And eventually you just have to keep doing the stunts more and more, just like variant covers. You have to do more and more variants. Now you have to do ratio variants. Now you have to do a 1 in 250 with a special autograph that's been, viewed by CGC. Now you have to do, all these reboots, and you have to do the event cycle faster and faster and faster because the rate of return is lower and lower and lower as people lose faith in what you're doing.
I think it's a big problem. And I think so of the names out there, I think there's one name we haven't mentioned. I typically try not to, just because people know we're friendly. But I think the person who's got the biggest name and biggest ability to do what Jonathan Hickman did at this point is Sean Murphy.
Jeff Thorne? Oh,
yeah. I love Jeff Thorne as well.
I'm teasing. Jeff
is like Zdarsky in the sense of, there's going to be fans of his work, but his name won't bring people. I think the only one left on the table that is in any way kind of a free agent in what we've been talking about is Murphy.
But Murphy's also got his own little corner of the universe where he's basically the boss of it.
Right.
Would you want to give that up?
No.
To go out there and put your name on something else that could eventually be hijacked, which is apparently what happened with Hickman. Yeah,
I memean, I wouldn't if I was him, and I think he's successful enough. He doesn't need to put himself into that position. But it's the thing here is, I'm looking for what brings that spark that you hit on nail on the head. The last one we saw like this was House of X Powers of 10. What's the next one that we can get? And then this, I think, feeds back into manga, in that you've got manga out there. And I've been posting some photos and things. I like to go to stores and see what's going on. And manga is penetrating this kind of new newsstand extremely well right now. You go to Target, and this is what blew my mind. And it is that you go there and you've got Marvel content everywhere in the movie aisle, in the up with the Legos and toys and T-shirts and posters. There's Marvel crap all over that store, but zero comics. And it's not like comics won't sell in Target, because they've got this manga section there now that sits on the main aisle because it's so popular and they can't keep it in stock. So that's a crazy message that comics absolutely will sell in this big box chain at huge volumes, much stronger in many ways than what would happen in a comic shop. But Marvel and DC, neither of them are at all even trying to play in that space. And so,
it's nuts. I'm a dad. I know you're a dad. It's time to do some Christmas shopping. My son, my 6-year-old, loves Captain America. That's his favorite character. Second favorite character is SpiderMan. And I wanted to get him some graphic novels for Christmas. I got him a 6-pack of Dogman.
Yeah, it's hard to. It's that stuff's everywhere. It's hard to find. Like, you have to go to a specialty shop. If you go to a bookshop, you may find what you want. But we're at this very bizarre place where there's clearly an interest in reading comics. I think the big lie that a lot of people have said is like, oh, people don't want to read anymore. They just want to play iPads. More readers. And screens.
It's growing.
Yeah, it's growing like crazy. People read.
You see the indie scenes where a lot of the creators have decided to bet on themselves, and even not including Substacks, we don't know exactly that's going to evolve into. But you look at what's going on with Boom and Image and whatnot, and the sales are going up, even though they don't have the character recognition.
There's a definite audience who wants to read. And what I think is interesting about the manga example, again, not as a way to kind of fight with Western comics, but just as a thing that stands on its own, is the people that are coming to manga are by and large coming there from Target and Walmart and places like that. These are, in theory, many of them are new readers. These aren't angry Marvel fans who got tired of Marvel and are going to something else. These are new readers going to manga. And
the crazy thing about manga is they have a couple things working for them. The consistency. Like, there's no reboots. There's never really a creative change. And there's a point of entry for every reader. It's volume 1.
It's true. I posted that, and there's a couple of people who came in there and wanted to do the, why don't they just use Google? Yeah, I mean, sure, anyone can use Google, but that's a silly thing to say to a customer who's standing there in the store. What kind of shop owner is going to tell a customer is like, I'm confused about where to start? Well, go use Google, you idiot. You're not going to say that.
Which version of Batman do you want to read? Do you want to read campy Batman? Do you want to read Detective Batman? Do you want to read Bat God?
Exactly. It's complicated. Now, for people who are long-term US comic fans, they can figure it out. Certainly, if maybe you have an interest in that. I did when I was a kid, sure, but you can't expect a lot of customers to do that. So, by the way, the viewers right now may be listening to this going, what is going on? They're talking about manga, they're talking about Sparks and comics, but I think the reason why I'm happy to talk to you about this today is I think all these things fit together. Like it's one puzzle that we're talking about here. Manga is getting its stuff out there in this new newsstand very effectively right now. Comics needs a spark, much like they got, but much bigger with House of X Powers of 10. The challenge is I don't see where that spark comes from right now. I don't know where it could possibly come from. And manga is dominating in this other space. That feels like a very bad combination of events.
There are two opportunities. Obviously, the one is SpiderMan that we talked about before.
Yeah.
But James Tynion is leaving Batman. Joshua Williamson definitely feels like a temporary fix. Who's going to be the new Batman creator that's going to come in there and be the new Bat person? That's obviously the most popular franchise in all of comic books, as far as Western comics, as far as sales. If you get somebody in there that could do something exciting and really pave a new way forward, not just for Batman, really for the DC Comics universe, because as Batman goes, the DC universe goes. But I just don't see him doing anything like that either. It feels like the editors are just bringing the most boring writers that they can find, so they don't, overshadow the character or something.
I mean, I think it's convenience. I think it's whoever's readily available is kind of where we're at right now. I mean, we know the pay isn't great. So it's like, who's going to take this lower money to get the work done? And I don't, everything I'm presenting here, I don't think leads to they're going to shut down comics and stop printing them. I mean, it is a profitable business. It is making a return. It's just, it's stuck in this, state of, it's very much arrested development. It's not going anywhere. And I know, we're talking about this. Guaranteed people at Marvel and DC are looking, at least at the management level, are looking at manga getting more and more and more sales, and Dogman getting scales, and Scholastic talking about opening up a comic empire, and kind of all these other pieces. They're not just going to go, well, we're done. I mean, they're going to try and compete with it. But again, it gets back to how do you compete? You mentioned SpiderMan. Who can go, name one name that's available that could go on SpiderMan and have the effect that Hickman would?
Ed Brubaker, but he'll never work for Marvel again.
Right. No, there are people who could do it, but none, I think.
Jeff Johns, but I think he's done too.
Yeah, Johns wouldn't. Todd McFarlane would get a huge bunch of attention. Yes. He's never going there.
He's launched his own Spawn empire. He's not sure. He's betting on himself like everybody else.
Yeah, you're down to. I mean,
they haven't made stars lately, other than Tynion, maybe Donny Cates lately. What stars have they created?
I mean, you could move Donny Cates onto it, and it would have a big impact. But people, I think, at Marvel are kind of a little bit not spoiled about Donny Cates, but it's they're used to him coming on, launching something as a number one, stays on it for a year, 2 years, and he goes. I mean, it's not a,
and he raises the profile of something that was struggling.
Yeah.
Spider-Man's not struggling like that.
No. I mean, there's not, Al Ewing isn't in that position right now. What do we get? What are we down to? Vita or Teeny or you go down the Marvel roster? Yeah, Mariko Tamaki. Yeah, I mean, none of these names are going to create a Hickman-like effect for that book. No, so what do you do then? It's an interesting time. I'm having the same thoughts as you are, by the way, of just because I don't enjoy doing videos where I just feel like I'm reporting on a funeral. That's not fun.
I know exactly how you feel. And you try to be upbeat and you try to make it entertaining or whatnot, but a lot of times it's like, oh, great, I'm shining another dog turd here.
Well, or just, you can try and make some stuff fun. I've gone all in on the sarcastic aspect of it, but people don't really, I mean, a lot of people are very emotionally attached to this stuff. They love these comics. Maybe they're not in the mood to hear a sarcastic take on comics, and I get it. Maybe I don't either, So I also, by the way, just to throw one more thing into the mix, and I know we're going long, but why not? It's a good rambly video. I'm hoping your people listening to this have some good things to think about. I think this situation that we're currently in and all this confusion, all this mess is also the reason why you see such angst and such fighting and all this stuff on social media, because what else are people going to talk about? In lieu of good stories and good things to rally around, people are just gonna kind of pick fights with each other and get annoyed and get tense and get depressed and get angry, and it just creates chaos there. Like when Hickman did his House of X Powers of 10, there was this brief moment where, at least for that part of the fan base, people were just having fun with the story.
Everybody
there was
loved
not
each other.
This war. You know?
Except for a couple of outliers, and we're like, yeah, you just don't get the story. And everybody else was talking about, this is amazing. I've got all these ideas and theories on what we're going to do. I used to do like 3 videos a week just talking about that stuff.
Yeah. And there's always people who complain about things, and that's okay. You're not everybody have to like everything, but it was a more positive moment. And now with all that's gone on, there's a lot more fighting because people just like, what else are they going to do to entertain themselves? They're going to go onto Twitter and be crazy.
Yeah, it's like if they announced Mark Millar was coming back to relaunch the Ultimate Universe, people would lose their minds. And I guarantee you that would bring in a ton of people. Like that would be a game changer, at least initially. But there's no way that Marvel could make it worth Millar's time.
Yeah. No, I agreed. There's nothing that a lot of these guys, what is it going to take? And he still in theory has a relationship with him. What would it take for Jeff Johns to come in and take over Justice League? I don't think it's in the cards for him, let alone Marvel.
I would need 2 years creative control. I want to be able to do this event at the very end of it. And, you know, I would want to be able to pick up my own editor, and I want to name my price.
Yeah.
Probably all of those are not going to work well for DC Comics. I think I don't think they like creativity right now. That's the kind of the feeling that I'm getting.
No, I don't. Well, I mean, I think it's what I call it's a conveyor belt business right now. They want to keep the lights on. They want to get books out. And I think there's some creators in there who are trying to do their very best. I do believe Philip Kennedy Johnson is trying to create a little epic with the War World stuff with Mongol and Superman. I think he really wants to do something that will leave a mark, and he may accomplish it. I think he's honest and erstwhile about wanting to do that. But as a collective, as a whole, like the other challenge is, let's say Johnson, because I love Last God, I think you did too. Let's say he's able to pull off that kind of feel and a truly epic cosmic Superman story, takes a year, really huge stuff. Would you notice if it was happening? Because nobody at DC is talking about that. They're not marketing it. They're not promoting it. If you follow Johnson on Twitter, you'll hear about it. But otherwise, same thing with Last God. That was an amazing story. It got zero attention.
And the crossover appeal of The Last God with the art from Riccardo Federici, that there's a built-in audience for fantasy, like sci-fi elements of stories that are well beyond superheroes.
Absolutely.
Nobody knew about it. And you see, we have seen some people say that Philip Kennedy Johnson's last Superman story is going to be better than, or bigger than, or more impactful than the death of Superman. We're hearing over at 10 Lives and 10 Deaths of Wolverine that this is going to be the greatest Wolverine story of all times. You guys, they've been using that as a pitch for these stories for so long, it means nothing. I don't even think the editors know what they're going to do when they say stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, that would be great. It would be great if we could get these kinds of things. But like you say, I don't know if they know what to do with it. I don't know that they have a big interest in promoting it.
Yeah. So
anyway.
I don't know, Perch. It's a frustrating time to be a comic fan. It's certainly a frustrating time to be a comic YouTuber. I love the audience. I love making the videos. I love talking to friends like you and Doc and everybody, and doing the live streams and everything. I just wish it could be a little bit more in praise and really promoting really cool stories. So there just aren't enough of them out there right now.
Yeah, I hope happy days will come again. That's what we just have to hope for. It's sad because again, there's a lot of people out there I think who are kicking ass and trying to do the best they can. There are some good stories out there. It just there needs to be this spark. There needs to be this moment. And it's not it can't be a big line-wide Marvel Now relaunch. It can't be a DC, new Crisis and new stories. Can't be another DC Rebirth 2. It can't be we're going to kill off Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, Flash, Green Lantern. They've all been killed off recently. But I mean, it has to be something real. It has to be a story that's really going to catch people's imaginations. And we can only hope for that to happen. So anyway, fun talking to you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for suggesting this. We were just kind of BSing. First, like, we need to talk. All right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Later, buddy.
Later.